Welcome to the Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational podcast, and I guess live stream, because we are live. I am Justin Mason, lead fantasy writer and analyst of Friends Fantasy Benefits, and the overlord of the Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational. And I have a very special guest, and it's so special that I decided we were going to do this live and let people ask him questions live as we go, because I have the champion of TGFBI this year. That is the Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational, and that is Kevin Hasting. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much, Justin. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, you should be happy because you are the champion this year. You sit atop of the throne or the mountain of the Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational, a title previously won by amazing people in the industry like Todd Zola and Clay Link. And now you're on the Mount Rushmore of it, right? I mean, Mount Rushmore has 4 faces. We've only had 3 winners. It's you up there now.
Is the 4th one my asterisk?
I don't think so. I think that is to be determined. Unlike our actual Mount Rushmore, we don't have more room for faces. This Mount Rushmore we do. Before we get rolling and start talking about your tremendous victory in 2020, which I don't think has an asterisk. You let other people are going to make their comments, but whatever. I think it took some skill to win this year, and quite a bit of it, and that you have, my friend. But let people know where you can reach on social media.
Very easily reached on Facebook and on Twitter. I am at Hasting Kevin, just my name backwards, and it's so much fun. It was when I started getting more into interacting with people like yourself and making my first trip to First Pitch, Arizona last year, which is bittersweet bringing that up. We'd be getting our bags packed right now. It is such a cool community that I'm really happy to be a part of.
Well, and you are obviously a great part of it because you won. And last year was my first year at First Pitch Arizona. And obviously more important things going on in the world than an event like that. I do miss it. I wish we were packing our bags right now to go to First Pitch. But next year, maybe he'll do something online. I don't know. We'll see. But we'll get back there eventually and get to watch some AFL and banter, because I mean, don't get me wrong, baseball is great and the conference is great, but really what I love about First Pitch Arizona was just getting to shoot the shit with everybody.
Absolutely, and that's what's great about baseball, in my opinion. I shared your tweet earlier about us doing this podcast, and we're going to talk baseball. This is the best part about it.
Yeah, and it was a weird season, and I mean, we drafted the TGFBI leagues in February, and then things got shut down in March. We didn't get to start playing till the end of July, and then it was just a sprint. So let's talk about your team and kind of what you did. Did you have a plan going into the drafts that you wanted to, attack it a certain way?
I did, and the draft itself was probably down the rung a few steps of how I was trying to concentrate on fantasy baseball in general in 2020. And again, this is prior to the season being canceled. It was to be more aggressive in making moves throughout the season, make a decision, don't look back. And I had teams I drafted at First Pitch in October. I drafted some DCs in December, drafted, like you said, in February, and then I did do some in July. And with all of those teams, it was still the same thing. Make quick decisions, don't look back, because most of them are going to be wrong, and just keep reacting.
Well, and I think that's a really good kind of lead into what you actually did, because, I've got your team over here and kind of looking at how you did. I wouldn't say like you were overpoweringly lucky or like you fell into a bunch of great things. It really looks like you kind of churned and burned a lot of your roster. Is that really kind of what helped you win the overall this year?
I believe so. I really do. I mean, my first 4 draft picks, I think, were Scherzer, who was good, not great, not a first rounder. I had Yordan Alvarez in the top 4, Keston Hiura, And it wasn't really till some of those later guys where I hit on Abreu. I had guys like Ian Happ and Dansby Swanson, who I have in tons of my leagues because I was taking them all a couple of rounds later in drafts than I thought I would absolutely have to. But for the most part, yes, it was. I went into 2020 once we did know about the abbreviated schedule, saying I wanted to lead every one of my leagues in at-bats and innings pitched.
Well, and I think that was a really good strategy, and I think obviously something that propelled you. I mean, you had some great pickups. Brandon Hayes is one of them. Wilmer Flores, another guy who was outstanding for you, hitting 364 on your team. I mean, in your pitching staff, like, it looks like you drafted Hansel Robles. It looks like you drafted Wade Davis. And so obviously you had to mine the waiver wire for saves, and you came out with Trevor Rosenthal.
Fortunately, I drafted him.
Oh, you drafted Rosenthal. So okay.
Fortunately, I'm a Royals fan. I'd been watching him in spring training. I was really buying into the strikeouts and the velocity being there, and most importantly, not walking people in his few spring training innings. And that saved me because I did end up with Montero and Bass and a couple other guys that didn't work out as well. But the fact that I had Rosenthal and didn't have to go chasing after him helped a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that must have been huge for your team as well. I mean, other guys that I think it looks like you probably streamed in and out. I mean, you have Tony Gonsolin, Drew Smiley, Tyler Mahle. So was the plan just to kind of rotate guys in and out until you found ones that worked, or were these guys you were targeting on early on in kind of the restart of the season?
Most of those guys that you just mentioned, Mahle, I drafted in some leagues. I don't think in TGFBI, but if I had dropped him, and which I'm sure happened with him in several leagues. Got him back. One of the biggest ones, because I got the all-important wins out of him, was like I said, making quick decisions. I bought into what a veteran like Adam Wainwright was doing early on and grabbed him, and he got me 3 or 4 wins over 3 or 4 weeks. And so he was very important. Yeah,
he for your team, 3 wins, 46 strikeouts in 54 innings, a 3.46 ERA, and a 1.10 WHIP. That's what Adam Wainwright did for your team. So, I mean, that was a huge part of your team. I mean, you mentioned, kind of getting, great contributions like Jose Abreu, but you also had guys who, let's be honest, might have, were kind of disappointing on your team, and you were able to either, replace them with someone else or jettison them off your roster. What would you say to fantasy owners in terms of the lessons learned in 2020 that you can apply to 2021?
Going right back to making those quick decisions. And that's something going back to First Pitch Arizona. It's something a lot of people talked about. Eno talked about it in his presentation about it being a Billy Beane thing. Right? We know we're going to make wrong decisions, but we have to, because by the time we know it's the right decision, it's too late and we don't have that opportunity any longer to even try.
I think that's one of the things that I'm really taking away from, I'm trying not to over-evaluate 2020 because it's such a weird kind of short sample season that I don't want to take too many lessons in, because 2021 is going to be a different season. It's going to be back to, hopefully. We hope it's going to be a different
exactly.
season and kind of back to normal. At the same time, I do think, that's one of the things that I tried to do this year. I was much more successful at it, which was being aggressive on FAB, being aggressive on the waiver wire, and being willing to just jettison a guy that's just not doing the things I need him to do off my roster as quickly as possible. We have some questions from Twitter, and if people have questions that they want to throw into the chat box, I'll throw them to Kevin as well. So feel free to throw some questions in there, or just say how beautiful I look, because I'm happy to take compliments as well. Smada at Smada BB, who's the guy helping me run the 2 early mock drafts right this minute. He asked, are you a go get your guys type of drafter, or everyone has a price?
Both. probably lean more towards the everyone has their price the earlier in the draft, and then go the later in the draft, because the spread between minimum and max picks for guys starts to expand greatly the later in the draft you go. And if there are guys I definitely want, I am willing to jump up a couple of rounds if need be to get them. Well, a perfect example, though, of earlier in a draft, if somebody drops to me, is the too early mocks going on right now. Through 4 rounds, I have 3 pitchers. I wouldn't typically do that, but I just got Blake Snell late in the 4th. I'm not letting him go any further.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good reason to maybe go a little bit away from what you originally thought you were going to do. The too early mocks are a different animal too.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I mean, just to ask people who've been to First Pitch Arizona, did you do one of the drafts at First Pitch Arizona?
I did.
Okay, I mean, so like doing a draft without any sort of ADP, without any sort of rankings, because most people, and the reason I like to do these too early mocks is people don't have their rankings done yet. Right. You know, they're really kind of drafting off a gut instinct and what they think. And, you can look at stats and stuff because it's a slow draft, but it's really about what do you feel is the right decision, as opposed to really getting bogged down too much into groupthink or nuance. And so, yeah, it's these are a different animal as opposed to, I'm sure, the amount of countless hours you put in to your draft strategy that for TGFBI and that victory there. Let's talk a little bit about that, though, because we all put countless hours in. Like, I know I've already started for my 2021 season, doing getting my ranks going, doing my analysis, trying to figure out, okay, the teams that went right, what went right about it, and teams went wrong, what went wrong about them. But we put in like 4 or 5 months worth of work, and then the season gets postponed 3 months. Like, how do you recover from that? Because I know a lot of people were just like, I'm done. I just can't do this.
Yeah, and I understood that. And in some of the other leagues I'm in that we would call home leagues, it was considered they're all keeper leagues. How do you do that? In a dynasty league, how does that all work? And we kept the leagues going because we didn't want that part of our lives taken away from us as well. We modified things, and I think it was, and I really tried. We all got sucked in to some extent, but I really tried not to worry too much about speculation to what was going to happen. Prepare and then react to what did happen.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's what a lot of us did. Did you? So, I mean, you obviously had kind of a thought process on how you wanted to draft and then how you wanted to play the season. How much did that change once the new season was getting going? Did you really adjust things quite a bit?
No, not really, because things started so well for me. I was shocked. Most of my teams shot right out of the gate, and so then it became pretty quickly, how am I holding on to this? And for TGFBI, for example, in the overall standings, about halfway through, that was only 4 weeks. But at one point, at about that time, I had like over 1,900 of the 1,950 hitting points available. This is not possible. There is no way I'm staying here. That means I have to improve my pitching. So I started making those moves, Adam Wainwright, and my pitching had to get better or I wasn't staying where I was. But shooting out of the gate made it so I could just stick with my plan that I was going to make moves quickly.
Oh, I mean, I think it worked, like I said, obviously worked very well for you, getting to get that crown. And you made a donation, I made a donation on your behalf. Do you want to talk about the charity you donated to? Because the winner of TGFBI got half of the money raised to be able to donate it to a charity of their choosing, and I donated the other half to a charity of my choosing. So talk a little bit about your charity.
Cure Search quite simply, children's cancer research. It was very ironic that when I got that request from you, that I was in Nebraska visiting my sister, and she had just mentioned, I can't believe it's been 13 years since Tanner's been gone. She had just brought it up, died at 7 years old of childhood cancer. My sister has done a lot of volunteer work for different organizations, so it was a very easy decision having that conversation go on as you asked me which charity I would like to support. And thank you so much, by the way. It's not, you did Potapalooza and did Meals on Wheels and the Pitcherless guys did the whole 4-day thing. That's what I love so much about this community. It's
a pretty amazing community of people that want to help, as much as I get a lot of credit, and I'm not going to turn it away. It's only because the people in the industry are willing to, kind of put up and show up for things that matter. And I'm really glad that you chose that charity. It's a fantastic organization, and they thanked us both on Twitter, which is really nice. And then the charity I donated the rest of the money to, Ruthie Lou Foundation, that goes to help parents who've lost children, and kind of help them get past kind of the grief of that. And it's something that's personally affected me, and so it was an organization I really wanted to support. So really appreciate everybody in TGFBI and the satellites, TGFBI satellites, that donated money to those organizations, because it was really you guys, as much as we got to choose the charities, it was really the people listening to this podcast, people who in the industry that wanted to donate money, and people who wanted to get into satellites and donate money to get in. Really, really appreciate that. If you want to get into a TGFBI satellite, and the winner of the satellites the next year get to go into TGFBI, you can go sign up over at tgfbi.com. If you're already in the industry or you want a satellite, go over to tgfbi.com, sign up for 2021 TGFBI, where Kevin is going to try and become the first ever repeat champion. Kevin is not he is not satisfied with just one face on the Mount Rushmore of TGFBI. Kevin wants a second face on Mount Rushmore. He wants to be able to look at himself on the Mount Rushmore of TGFBI. So Kevin, how are you going to try to accomplish that?
I think, first of all, it seems nearly impossible with the sheer number and quality of players that are involved. But absolutely, to make a run at it is the making quick decisions and not looking back. And it's not as much about player evaluations or projections to me as it is piecing your team together and then making the moves as it goes along. We can argue all day long about what order to put the top 5 or 6 guys in the first round in. And unless there's a major injury, it's really not going to matter. It's going to matter how you build around it. And then not make mistakes. I said don't look back. Doesn't mean you can't learn from mistakes you made. My biggest one was before the season even started. I lost Buster Posey as my second catcher. He opted out. And I spent 20% of my budget to get Kiner Falefa. And I dropped him a week later. And I knew I knew that I wasn't going to need him because Todd Zola drafted 4 catchers because he had accidentally had his team on auto draft. I think people probably remember that. And he had ended up with 4 catchers because then he got the ones he did want. So I knew he was dropping a couple. I could have went 4 days without a catcher. It was ridiculous that I made that move because he kind of slumped off the bat. He didn't get his 6 or 7 stolen bases out of the gate. And I dropped him and replaced him with Kurt Suzuki and somebody else. Sure enough, the saving grace in my mind was somebody else then spent another $200 on him in Fab to pick him up. But not to overreact as well. That was a silly mistake for 4 days of a player.
That's a really good point, because I think often there is this kind of, I don't want to say it's fear of missing out, but I think there is this kind of knee-jerk reaction. So how do you balance that? How do you balance wanting to churn and burn when guys just aren't doing what they're doing and not wanting to overreact? Because there is a balance to that.
Absolutely. And that's what's, like you're saying, how do you do that? That is the question for all of us, I think. I think one of the ways is cutting bait on injured guys, especially in the shortened season. That made that part was easier this year. If a guy was going to be out 3 to 4 weeks, we were letting him go left and right. Everybody was. There was no point in holding on to him. And do your churning and burning a week or two early. This guy's just starting to show some signs. In a couple of weeks, I might use him if he does it for another week. Well, you got to pick him up now before the price goes up. It's easy. We talk about it all the time. You and Paul talk about it all the time. It's easy to talk about, but it's so hard for us to pull the trigger. We don't like, man, I was on this guy and I got him in the 18th round and I know he's going to be good. Well, when he's not after a couple of weeks, we got to let him go.
Yeah. I mean, that's the hard part because we do so much evaluation. We put so much work into some of these players and we go, oh man, I really think, I'm trying to think of an example of Garrett Hampson. I really think Garrett Hampson, this is his year. This is his time. Yeah. And, it's so hard to sometimes cut the ties on those guys that you were just so in on. But I mean, sometimes you have to take the names away, right? Like you can't just look at what their names are and remember that you had a love for this guy. You have to really just make the decision, hey, he's not getting the playing time, or he's just, when he is getting the playing time, he's not hitting or not pitching well. And, it's time to cut bait. And if someone else benefits because of that, okay, but I can't afford him to drag down my team.
Right. That's the hardest part. The fear of someone else picking him up and he takes off. We can't worry about it. Let him go. Names are for identification purposes only is the way I like to phrase that. And but like in anything, I think the different fears control us.
Such is life, right?
Yes, exactly.
I got a question from someone watching the stream, and if you are watching the stream, you want to ask Kevin a question or ask me a question. I don't know why you want to ask me a question. I finished 104th. That's not that great. I mean, but if you want to ask Kevin a question, you can just throw it into the stream, and I'll throw it to him. Ruvain Guy, co-host over at TGFBI's pod, asks, when did Kevin start looking at the overall compared to his league?
As far as strategy, probably at about the halfway point. I was fortunate early in the season. I was in the league with Todd Zola, defending champion, and shot out. My team started off nicely, and Todd Zola was right behind me in second place and seemed like gaining on me daily. At about the halfway point, when I had made some of those pitching changes, I felt very comfortable with where I was at in my league. So I did start making more decisions based on where the overall was. So at about halfway. Okay.
And, I mean, it worked out. I don't have any more questions from the crowd. So unless I get more, I just want to talk to you about a draft that you and I are doing right now.
Yeah, awesome. It's so much fun.
Yeah, just because the season is over doesn't mean that people aren't drafting for real. And I'm not talking about too early mocks. You and I are in a draft that Zach Roto put together, I think, with the Draft Champagne podcast. So what have you done so far? Or, where are you drafting from? What slot?
I'm back in the lucky number 11 spot.
Is that where you drafted in TGFBI?
It is.
Wow, so it is lucky. So now I'm bummed you got that spot. What did you do in the first round?
I took, I'm pulling it up, but I should remember my first round pick. Oh, I took Trevor Story in the first round. And I immediately, as this was being set up, I put 12 guys in my queue, and Trevor Story was the 11th guy in my queue. So I got 11 out of 11. So we're all reading each other's minds to start out.
Yeah, I mean this wasn't done KDS style like we do for TGFBI or you typically do for NFBC, and this is a draft and hold league, so we'll be drafting 50 rounds. I'm sure I'll be talking about it on various podcasts, including this one. So if you're interested in kind of a first real early draft, we'll be talking about it. I end up with the 8th spot, which is actually like the perfect spot. I feel like there's a top 8. And then there's like a next 10, like and I had the choice of Soto versus Trey Turner, and man, that was tough for me. Like I
love that decision. That
yeah, it's like a
8, I think is, and I think I've heard a lot of people talking this way already. I think that's becoming some groupthink already. We all want the 8 spots.
Yeah, I think you want that back half, whereas. Because, I mean, the difference between, well, one, I think, and if we go over and we look over at the 2 early mock ADPs, we're seeing a lot of different variants in that top 8. But it really seems like there's a top 8 that's kind of coming together, and that's with, 2 or 3 starting pitchers in DeGrom, Cole, and Bieber sometimes. And then you've got, obviously, Acuna, Soto, Betts, Trout, Trey Turner, kind of rounding out that top group. I'm okay with any of them. Like I'm totally fine with any of them. And I don't think there's that big of a difference that I want to wait 8 or 7 or 8 spots for it to come back to me in the second round.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
It's a nice spot. And even at 11, I mean, oh gosh, I guess I just made my pick. I don't know if you heard the horn go off on your
I didn't, but I felt my phone buzz as I was actually looking at your team. So let's talk about the rest of this draft real quick before we wrap up this edition, because I think it's really interesting, the team that you're already putting together. First round, you took Trevor Story, like we talked about. Second round, you took Manny Machado, moving quite a bit. And then Brandon Woodruff as your first starting pitcher. Trent Grisham, another San Diego product, at pick 50 in the 4th round. And then you just took Carlos Carrasco. I really like the start of your draft.
Thank you. As usual with a lot of us, I think I'm questioning some things, but I'm pretty happy with it as well. I hate to be too happy with the draft, especially this early.
I absolutely hate my team already. So, it's while I do like that 8 spot to get one of those top 8 guys, I was not in love with anything that came back around to me. And so I ended up taking Alberto Mondesi, which is not something I ever thought I would do in the second round, but a pairing with Juan Soto kind of makes up for that average quite a bit. Definitely going to get a lot of RBIs. And then the speed potential is just huge. And so I wanted to try to start. So my first 5 picks are Juan Soto, Alberto Mondesi, Lance Lynn, Kenta Maeda, and then Brandon Lau, who I was actually stoked with to get just recently with my 5th pick in that draft. So I don't love my team yet, but we'll see what happens as we get into the later rounds.
Yeah, definitely. That's what's so fun about these draft and holds. And next month they'll start up on NFBC. We'll be able to do all of them we can handle.
Not me. I'm not doing any more drafts, at least real drafts, until January. This was just to kind of fill in some time for a little bit. But I'm definitely trying to pare down the amount of leagues I do. And the hard part is saying no when I start seeing them pop up on NFBC and stuff.
I only did 1 DC last year. Kind of right after Thanksgiving, I really get the itch. And so I did 1 right there, and it ended in early December. One of the crazy things here, and it's a guy, I'm not just bringing it up because you talked ill of him in the past, but I was huge on, because of his price, Dansby Swanson last year. And he went the 4th pick of the 4th round in this draft.
Oh, wow. I didn't even notice that.
He's not going to cost that much in every draft, is he?
I think 2021 is going to be one of the most interesting years in terms of drafting, especially drafting early. Yeah. Because I think the fact that there are going to be some people that come into 2021 using their original 2020 rankings.
Absolutely.
And
I think
just
that
kind
could be a lot of.
Yeah, just throwing out 2020 in general. And then there's some people who are going to be coming in with their rankings based largely upon what happened in 2020. And so I think there's just going to be a lot of variance in terms of ADP. And, one of the reasons I did the too early mocks this year, because I wasn't originally planning to. I was originally going to just say, I don't want to do it. It's so much work, the too early mocks. The too early mocks are actually more work than setting up TGFBI.
Wow.
Because, with TGFBI, don't get me wrong, it takes a lot of work to get it set up, but then I hand it to NFBC, and NFBC handles it.
Gotcha.
Whereas with the too early mocks, I've got to handle everything outside of Smata building the ADP off of the drafts. And it's frustrating. So I wasn't going to do it this year, but there's just so much uncertainty. I kind of wanted to see what would happen. And that's the reason why I put it together. And so I think you are going to see in some leagues a guy like Dansby Swanson go in the 4th round, and sometimes he'll go in the 8th round. Or maybe even lower. I think, another guy in that same vein at the same position is Corey Seager. I've seen Corey Seager go in the 1st or 2nd round already. And then I've seen him go in the 5th and 6th. And so, I just think that you're going to just see a ton of that this year with a lot of different guys. For instance, I just took Teoscar Hernandez in, I think, the 6th round of my too early mock. I think that's the midway point, and I think you're going to see him go in the 2nd, 3rd round of drafts, and I think you'll see him go in the 8th, 9th round of drafts. I just think that these guys, especially the breakout guys from 2020, are just going to have a wide variety of draft spots.
Yeah, it's going to be – and the cool thing is that what's going to make it so much fun is that we'll continue on into March. Things will stabilize a little bit, I'm sure, but there's still going to be such varied opinions, like you said, ranging from I'm kicking 2020 out altogether to the overreactions to 2020. And it's going to lead to some crazy ADPs. The minimum min pick are going to be wider than usual for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think it's going to be really difficult to tell. And I think for those people who play in higher stakes leagues, especially, and really in a lot of leagues, just go get your guys. Figure out who your guys are. Go get them. Don't worry about falling victim or prey to, kind of what the ADP tells you. Because especially, until mid-March, it's going to be useless. ADP is going to be very, very, very useless this year. And so I would really caution people to do the research, figure out what you believe or the people you trust believe if you're going to be drafting off of, someone in the industry's rankings, and really sticking to it and not worrying too much about, it says his ADP is 80.2 and we're at pick 102. This guy's a huge bargain. I just don't know that the bargains are necessarily real. I think it's maybe a facade coming into this year or next year.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. It's just, I'm sitting here looking at the draft board of the draft we were talking about, and it's amazing when you actually go through it. We're in this draft. I've seen every pick made, but to look at the draft board, it is such a combination, like we said, of what we would have seen in March and some reactions to players and what they did in 2020 mixed in. Yeah.
I think that is just kind of what it's going to be like too. I think that there are going to be, like I said, people who really buy into 2020 means everything or means a ton. And then some people are like, 2020 doesn't mean anything. So let's not even use it as a baseline. Personally, it's going to be a little bit in between for me. I definitely think that I'm not going to throw, I got into an argument with Paul on Sleeper in the Bus recently a little bit about Chris Paddock. I'm not going to throw him out because he had a bad 2020. I'm not going to drop him as far as maybe Paul will in his ranks. But I'm also not going to give him a complete pass either. So, but I think everybody needs to kind of come up with their own formula of how much they're going to evaluate 2020 versus 2019.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the things I learned the most from 2020 is I'm not spending money on closers. And I didn't, and it hurt me. This wasn't the only league that I had Hansel Robles and Wade Davis in. I was doing that a lot. And Hansel Robles didn't even hurt me by not getting saves and blowing up ratios for a week. I had Griffin Canning and I had Andrew Heaney. He cost them both wins in 1 week. And it was a big deal. But the reason it didn't hurt me very much is because nobody else was any better off except the Liam Hendricks owner. One exception. And the year before, it was both of the top two closers were bad. I think even as bad as my closer situation was, it still reinforced the idea that I'm not spending money on them.
See, and I did the exact opposite. I did spend money on my closers, and it worked out beautifully for me. In almost every league I was in this year, I think outside of TGFBI, I was number one in saves. And that's because I invested in guys I felt really comfortable about. It wasn't necessarily, paying for the haters or the Kirby Yateses. It was more a matter of looking at the situations and going, okay, there's no one that's going to surpass Alex Colomé. Like, Alex Colomé's got that job. And if you look at Alex Colomé's record, he's been great. Right. Archie Bradley was a great, pick until he got moved to Cincinnati. But by then you had already recouped the value and then some. Guys like Daniel Hudson. I was talking about Daniel Hudson being a fantastic third closer for teams, back in November of last year, just after the World Series last year, and had him on virtually every team of mine, and it paid off. So I think it's not necessarily a matter of don't pay for saves or do pay for saves, but pay for saves in the right way, and that's identifying guys who've got secure jobs.
I agree with you. I agree with that, and I take what you did as not paying for saves. I was getting Hansel Robles in the same area you're getting Colomé and Archie Bradley. My guy didn't work out. I'm not saying I'm not going to spend on a guy in that range anymore. And Hudson was going much later. Lenny kept saying, I can't believe people still think Sean Doolittle's the closer in Washington. Oberg was every draft that I took Wade Davis in. Now, Wade Davis got me 2 saves and blew up and then was gone. But in every draft I took him in, Oberg was drafted ahead of him. And we knew Wade Davis was the closer. So I think we were on the same page. It just worked out better for you.
Well, I think it worked out better for you. You're the one who's holding the proverbial trophy, or yeah. And I like I said, I think I finished 104th in TGFBI, which I'm not actually mad about that, considering. I had a lot of things go really, really wrong in TGFBI, and so to finish, I think 5th or 6th in my league, top 100 or top 104th overall, I'll actually take that, considering how disaster of a team I ended up with. I would have done something completely different had I known we were going to have the layoff and then the late start, for sure.
That was another thing. Luck, good fortune, whatever you call it, for me was I didn't have guys, or a lot of them, that were on the teams that were affected by COVID early in the season. And it wasn't necessarily that I didn't have to deal with that directly as much that helped, but it was, as much as we think that the first half stats of the season and the second half stats of the season both count the same, it's much different when you start off strong, because you had that. It's banked. And so then you're reacting for the rest of the way based on my counting stats didn't suffer because I wasn't losing guys left and right like many people were if they had Cardinals on their teams, Phillies on their team. Even though they didn't have a breakout, they missed several games early. And that set a lot of people back because those were teams that had a lot of fantasy relevant players, and their counting stats suffered and they were chasing the rest of the way.
Well, and they had less of a chance to catch up because a lot of the Cardinals games became doubleheaders.
Exactly.
And 7 innings. And so that means you're missing, 2 innings per game that is actually being played, which, doesn't seem like a lot in the day or maybe in the week. But when you're talking about, I think they played 11 doubleheaders, that's 22 games. So that's, 44 innings left off of your team's chance of, making an impact. Like, that's huge, especially from the pitching sense.
Yep, absolutely.
So, all right, Kevin, why don't we ride people where you can reach on social media, and then say anything you want to plug?
I am simply my name backwards, at Hasting Kevin, out on Twitter, on Facebook as well. Don't look at that as much anymore, but I am there, and I'm just looking forward to keeping this going and getting to 2021, and hopefully everybody out there is safe and healthy, and we'll be seeing each other soon at some live events in the spring.
I'm looking forward to some live events. I'm really hoping we can get this COVID stuff kind of figured out, so that way I can head to New York for the main event and Tout Wars, and hopefully see some friends at some point that I haven't gotten to see. God, now it's since AFL last year, because there was no Tout Wars, no New York trip for me. So I'm hoping we're going to get those live events. If you want to get into the 2021 Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational and take down the champ Kevin, you can go apply over at TGFBI.com. If you're not in the industry or you haven't won a spot either through a qualifier or some other event, you can sign up for a TGFBI satellite. Winners of those get into the next year's Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational. You can do that at TGFBI.com as well. Thank you so much for coming on, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Justin. And once again, thank you for all of the work that you do, putting this all together, and in the end, helping out some charities out there.
Fantastic. Well, that will do it for Kevin and I. Have fantastic baseball offseason.